Thanks, everyone. I'm running between meetings. That's why I'm joining quite late. And then I'll have to run away too at 3:30 because I have another meeting after. Today, I'm going to try and briefly talk about generative AI and the intersections of racialized gender, race, and ethnicity. As Lau said, I'm a Learning Innovation Officer, Learning Innovation Support Unit at University of Glasgow. I also study a doctorate in education at University of Strathclyde, and I've been teaching since about 2005. Okay. There we go. So just some reflections on generative AI. AI tools rely upon raw data created by humans. These data sets in turn reflect the biases of those who have gathered the evidence, which will be racial, economic, and gendered in nature. So that's by Benjamin, 2019. This is from my blog post. This is just, the blog post was a reflection on experimenting with generative AI, specifically text to image. Just to kind of refresh your memory, there are text to text, text to image, text to media such as audio and video, and then text to code, coding, programming, and output, programming purposes. Sorry, I'm going to focus on text to image. However, what I will talk about applies to, I think, all of these. I'm not so comfortable with text to coding, but it definitely applies to the first three. So what I did was I experimented with DALL-E, which is an generative AI image creator, a text to image creator. These are the prompts that I used. So this is what DALL-E created for prompts 1 and 2. And if I had Mentimeter, I would ask you questions, but I might just ask you to put in the chat if you're comfortable. What are your immediate reactions to seeing these images? Okay. By the way, I can't see the chat, so I'll look at the chat after I've presented. Here's the next one. Actually, before I do that, just to remind you. So those were the first two prompts. And here are the next two prompts. And again, if you can share any reactions, and unfortunately I can't see them, but I'll have a look at them after.
If you want, I can read it for you. If that
Sure.
helps. I think with the first one, it's stereotypical, old, white, poor. The hands and eyes stand out for a bit. Hard to tell the difference. Stereotypical, old-fashioned. And in this one, their comments like they look like a fairy tale book illustration, similar features. US white, look more prosperous, stereotypical with person of color.
Okay, thanks. What you said is exactly, it's some of what I was going to say too, but what I did want to highlight for this, for the first two prompts, it does look stereotypical of how they might be represented. So you could also say, you could almost say it's xenophobic in that case, because we're talking about Eastern European women here. What's problematic about especially the second one, so these are supposed to be Russian women, 81, depending on the statistics, 77 to 81% of Russia's population is ethnic Russian, right? But then the rest are Tatars, Ukrainians, Bashkirs, Chuvash, Chechens, Armenians, who look a little bit different. But in this case, these images might be shown to just representing rather, Russians, ethnic Russians, rather than anyone else who lives there. So you might ask the question, well, how algorithm encode the concept of a Russian person? How do they do that? What is a Russian in terms of the algorithm itself? And of course, this leads on to the next one. So DALL-E has created these images. Now, I originally put this in, and when I put that prompt in, that's all I got. Okay, and there's a big problem with that because, again, similar to Russia, the US has a population of over 300 million people, but nearly 80 million, 1 in 4 people are non-white. So in this case, it's completely invisibilized or erased anyone who is non-white. So Asians, well, what Americans call Asians, Black people, Indigenous people, so on and so forth. The other thing is, of course, the representations of grandmothers from the US racialized as Black. There's a few issues here. Just go back into presentation mode. So as we can see here, the origins of stereotype representation of Black lie in part in minstrelsy in the 1800s. So in minstrel shows, white women portrayed Black Americans as blackening their face using burnt cork, while exaggerating other features such as the lips by using red or white paint. And these avatars, some of them, do represent how Black women are constructed, using the character, using what is called the caricature of the wench. So they're racist. These images are not only gendered, but they're also they're racialized and gendered, and they're racist. I'm mixing up some of those words because I'm still getting used to using some of them. My background is education, not sociology, so I'm having to pick up a lot of sociology terminology. There's other things. As you can see, their dress is more flamboyant. Their eyes are larger, gaping mouths, huge lips. Again, these are all very stereotypical, and they all originate from the racist portrayals in minstrelsy shows around how people racialized as Black continues to kind of be represented in media, and as you can see in AI. So what this represents is, and there's a whole body of work that people are doing, it's the coloniality of AI. So the imaginary representation of Black American women, for example, is perpetuated through a specific imaginary, and what is produced in AI kind of represents that. So if anyone knows Aunt Jemima, for example, and pancakes, that imagery is huge in the US context, and it still is known. It resurfaces in the digital realm, so in generative AI. So it moved from print media to generative AI media, right? It's all media. This also represents what is termed algorithmic coloniality. So it's another form of coloniality. So coloniality is a state of knowledge and power relations where those formerly colonized or enslaved faced inherent disadvantages in society, while former colonizers retain advantages. So there's coloniality of being, knowledge. There's so many forms of coloniality. I'm happy to kind of share those later. But this is an algorithmic coloniality. In essence, it's the kind of, the coding has produced these things. I'm pretty much almost done, but I wanted to thank the members of the University of Glasgow Decolonising the Curriculum Community of Practice, because they've been helpful in shaping this. Also Sarah Camacho Felix, and Ruby Zelzer, because they they looked over this blog post, but also what I was kind of talking about. And there are some references. There's a ton of references that you can probably draw on.